What right does Israel have to do that?
For 3 reasons. Will you allow me to finish?
Well, there are no reasons.
Well, you've
It's
just
none of
asked
your business whether the journalists view their safety as being at risk.
I'm sorry, you haven't heard the reasons yet. The first, of course, is the safety of the journalists, and I appreciate you don't accept that. The second...
I think it's a load of nonsense.
The second is the safety...
The idea you're doing is that some quaint concern for the safety of journalists is bullshit.
That was reason number one. Reason number
bullshit. So just to be clear, none of the Palestinian journalists who've been killed are actually journalists.
I said Hamas members.
Oh, they're all Hamas members?
Those that are... And
every single dead Palestinian journalist is a member of Hamas. Is that your position?
No, listen, I appreciate Piers.
That is also bullshit.
But misrepresenting...
No, I'm not going to let you bullshit. I don't like to keep saying the word bullshit, but when you hear a lot of bullshit, you have to call it for what it is. Bullshit.
Natasha, does Israel have nuclear weapons?
Sorry, I'm an independent
Does Israel have nuclear weapons?
Of the English bar.
Yes or no?
That's a good question.
I'm not instructed.
Yes or no?
I'm
yes
not
or no,
instructed.
Natasha? Do they have
Does
nuclear
Israel have
weapons?
nuclear weapons, Natasha?
Israel's representative lawyer Natasha walks into Piers Morgan's Uncensored show thinking she was going to lecture the world with legal jargons and Zionist bedtime stories, only to get double-teamed by a surprisingly based Piers and a fully unleashed Dave Smith. Piers is not going to hold back, you'll see. He's gonna call her arguments bullshit on live TV, like he just got tired of playing media babysitter. And Dave, he came in swinging with logic so sharp, it made Natasha's talking point look like a kindergarten debate on Minecraft ethics. This is not just debate, y'all. It's going to be a massacre of misinformation. One side brings excuses, the other side brings receipts, empathy, and the audacity to say you don't get to bomb kids and call it democracy. So grab your popcorn and maybe a neck brace, because the whiplash from watching Piers and Dave actually agree on something might just restore your faith in televised sanity. Let's go.
And I mean, I guess my question for you, Natasha, you're a lawyer. Would you be prepared to defend him if Netanyahu appeared at The Hague?
We're talking about the International Criminal Court.
Would you be prepared to defend him?
No, well, let me be clear about the context, because this is important. We're talking about the International Criminal Court, which has no jurisdiction in this matter because Israel is not a party to the ICC and Palestine is not a state. It clearly made significant errors on prior determinations of jurisdiction on the basis of an accession document, supposedly by the Palestinian Authority, which was never circulated. That was one of the primary planks of its decision in 2021, which has fallen away. It is proceeded on this basis in contravention of its own rules, that of complementarity, and on an entirely false basis. So my organisation, UK Lawyers for Israel, has put out a review of Karim Khan's application for warrants, which demonstrated that every phrase of every sentence of that document was false. In that context, we're not seeing an international criminal court anymore. We're seeing a political body which is seeking to rehabilitate itself by going after the leaders of the world's Jewish state because of its abysmal
Is there anyone
reputation.
who criticises the Israeli government that you don't think is doing so for political reasons or because they're being deluded by lies?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
In other words, is anybody actually acting, do you think, with any integrity when they criticise the Israeli government?
Within Israel.
Because you make it sound like everyone's either stupid, deluded, or politically motivated.
Within Israel, there is the most vibrant political debate and criticism that you will see anywhere. What I'm calling out are the lies and the falsehoods and the blood libels that are being propagated. And those
I was told by the
interested...
ambassador to UK it was a blood libel for me to suggest that Israel had killed children in this war.
No, I don't believe that was the case. I think it was to do with targeting children.
No.
And there is a difference.
Right.
Because we are hearing that Israel is targeting children, and that couldn't be further from the fact.
Last week, 9 out of 10 children in one home where 2 doctors reside were killed in an airstrike. What was that?
Remarkable.
Well, what was that?
That has been based only on the basis of hearsay.
You don't believe that story?
I want these stories.
Wait a minute. You don't believe that those children were killed?
I have seen conflicting accounts, and I want that story to be properly investigated before the international media runs with it.
You think those 2 parents, one of whom I think operated on one of the children?
I have a question.
You think that those 2 doctors, the parents, they just made it up?
Why are
that
those
9 of their
children
10 children had been blown to pieces by an Israeli airstrike?
If this is true...
You don't believe it?
Well, why on earth was artificially generated imagery used to promote this story when it first happened?
I've got to say, Natasha, I think what you've just said about that family is despicable.
We've seen time
I'm sorry,
and time again.
it's despicable.
Blood libel?
Somebody, you talk about blood libel, like Dave said, you talk about blood libel, you talk about lies,
All I said
you talk about promoting propaganda, and here you sit here as a lawyer and you say that you do not believe those 9 children were killed.
I didn't say that. You're putting
You
words
did?
in my mouth.
Do you believe it or not?
I said that there were conflicting
Do you
accounts
believe it?
and it needs to be
Do
investigated.
you believe it?
I thought you would be the first
parents said
person
9 of their
that
10
wants-
children were killed.
They
Do you
haven't-
believe them
they
or not?
haven't- they
Or
haven't
did those
said that
2
directly.
doctors make it up?
They haven't said that directly as far as I have seen. I have seen second-hand accounts and hearsay. But it's important to ask, why are these civilians still there? Why is it that
Actually, no, it's important to ask whether you believe that family have lost 9 of their 10 children.
I want to know why the international
You don't, do
community...
you? You don't. And this goes to the point that I would say about Israel
Why are
generally
these
now, in this war now.
civilians
Israel says they don't believe anything.
coming out of
Everything,
Hamas,
every
indeed.
story that comes out about the deaths of civilians in Gaza,
Because there is a
someone
track
will
record
pop
of
up
lies.
representing the Israeli government saying, it's propaganda, it's not true, I've heard it's not right, I've heard it didn't happen. And the reason you can get away with it, frankly, is because you won't allow, the Israeli government won't allow, I don't want to keep putting you in the government, but you defend them. The Israeli government refuses to allow international journalists to get in there and do their job and verify whether any of these things are actually happening.
I have been
when
there.
you say they didn't happen.
I can help you with why. I've been there in September and seen a great deal of the Hamas terror infrastructure with my own eyes, including the fact that when we were in Rafah, every second building was being used
Did you see any dead
by
children?
Hamas. No, and this is the important factor.
Why do you think that?
Our movements...
Is that because there
very-
aren't any,
No.
or because you were being given a sanitised little tour,
No, we were
which
being-
didn't involve seeing the bodies of dead children?
We were very restricted because of the nature of the battlefield in
What
in
right does the
Gaza.
IDF have to restrict journalists doing their job? In every
well, on
other
the
war I've
basis-
ever been involved in, including sending my Daily Mirror journalists to cover the Iraq war in Baghdad, where they rang me at midnight to ask if they should leave or stay in a hotel, the Baghdad Hilton, I think it was called, before shock and awe arrived. So huge responsibility on my shoulders then about the lives of my journalists, but they were prepared to risk them to report the truth to the wider world. Israel has decided no journalists from outside can go in.
For 3 reasons.
And make that assessment themselves.
Yes.
What right does Israel have to do that?
For 3 reasons. Will you allow me to finish?
Well, there are no reasons.
Well, you've
It's
just
none of
asked
your
me-
business
you've
whether
just-
the journalists view their safety
you
as being at
haven't-
risk.
I'm sorry, you haven't heard the reasons yet. The first, of course, is the safety of the journalists, and I appreciate you don't accept that. The second...
I think it's a load of
The
nonsense.
second is the
The
safety...
idea you're doing is out of some quaint concern for the safety of journalists is bullshit.
That was reason number one.
Utter bullshit.
Reason number two is the
These better
ability...
get better.
Is the ability of IDF soldiers to be able to conduct this war against Hamas without...
Without the journalists getting in the way?
No, without...
They've actually, by the way, they've killed more journalists in Palestinian journalists than in any war
Hamas
in
members
modern
wearing
history.
press vests are not journalists. And reason number three...
So none of them are journalists?
And reason number three...
So just to be clear, none of the Palestinian journalists who've been killed are actually
I
journalists.
said
Is that
Hamas members.
Oh, they're all Hamas
Palestinian
members?
Islamic, those that are... And those
Every
that belong
single
to,
dead
that's not what I
Palestinian
said.
journalist
I
is a
don't-
member of Hamas. Is that your position?
No, listen, I appreciate Piers.
That is
your
also
style.
bullshit.
But
No, I'm
misrepresenting,
not letting you bullshit.
misrepresenting every
So
word...
that's 2 out of
is
2. What's the
okay.
third reason?
Our mutual friend Douglas Murray was embedded with the IDF in Lebanon.
You said the words yourself. I love Douglas, but he was embedded with the IDF.
Right.
He's unbelievably
But in
pro-Israel.
let me finish.
So of course
Will
he
you
was
allow
going
me
to
to
write
finish?
what
No.
he witnessed while embedded with the IDF.
No, let me finish what his experiences there were. The difference
I
is
read
that in
it.
Lebanon...
You don't have to tell me.
There is something I think that you won't have heard. The IDF are able to allow journalists into Lebanon. He wasn't the only one. There were many other
There
international
have been a
journalists with him.
tiny... No.
Those other international journalists with him
Bullshit.
were very clear.
There
that
have
they-
been a tiny
beg your
handful of journalists led in by the IDF in
I
tightly
appreciate-
controlled environments
Yes, and you
to
know-
witness what the IDF were prepared to let them
And
see.
you know what
And
those
actually, what it
journalists
needs this
said?
war to stop the bullshit, which is out of control, by the way, in this last 3 minutes, is to let international journalists go in and do their jobs. And they will worry with their networks or organisations about their safety, but they should be allowed to do their jobs. And there's only one reason why the Israeli government doesn't want international journalists crawling all over Gaza. It's because they do not want them reporting
Piers,
what they will find.
reason number
which, by the
three.
way, will include the bodies of thousands of children who you, on the Israeli side, are not counting as you count the terrorists you kill, but who journalists would.
Reason number 3 is that those journalists that were in Lebanon said that they had to be very careful about what they reported because of what Hezbollah would do to their colleagues in Beirut. The fact that international journalists have sunk to this level, that they would allow their reportage to be controlled by terrorist organizations, Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah included, is despicable. That is the real issue here that has driven
Actually,
the
it's not.
international
The real issue is...
Of course it is.
This
is terrorist organizations' propaganda.
Actually, it's not. Let me bring
David.
David.
And the fact that you will not allow me to answer a single question.
You know what?
Here
You've made all your points, and they all, I'm afraid, Natasha, turned out to be bullshit. So let me bring in Dave. Dave, look, I don't like to keep saying the word bullshit, but when you hear a lot of bullshit, you have to call it for what it is, bullshit. And the truth is, particularly on the journalist front, there is a very simple way that all this fog of war confusion could be resolved, and that is to let the journalists in. And there's a very simple reason why they're not. They don't want the journalists to report to the world what is actually going on. Otherwise, they'd let them in.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I understand, Natasha, that you're upset that Piers isn't letting you finish your thought, but the idea that the number one reason you gave is that what Israel just values the sanctity of life so much that they're so worried about these journalists, it's just so ridiculous.
Actually,
it doesn't pass the basic smell test. It's offensive to think that level, you talk about propaganda being spread. That is just pure propaganda. It is obvious. It is obviously the reason Israel doesn't.
Who's going to be blamed? Sorry, Natasha just said, who will be blamed for the journalist deaths? A recognition that yet more journalists would be killed, because I think it's well over 100 Palestinians who you think are all Hamas members. But you know what? It's not your job to worry about the safety of international journalists. They've all been to many, many war zones. Whether it's Clarissa Ward at CNN, Jeremy Bowen at BBC. I know a lot of these people myself. You let the journalists do their job, and you do yours.
Yeah, by the way,
and the IDF can do theirs.
They don't seem to have this concern about being blamed for slaughtering the children of Gaza.
They don't admit they're killing any.
To stop that. Right. As every time you hear, it's either, this is propaganda, this is Hamas propaganda, those kids weren't intentionally killed, all this stuff. But look, like we said at the beginning, it doesn't meet the basic smell test, the basic human test. If you're telling me, as you said, Natasha, that Hamas has locked up all of the aid that's gotten in there, so who are you targeting when you don't let further aid in? It's the civilian population who's not getting it. Now, you could sit here and say Israel isn't targeting them, meaning I blow up a building that I know has little children in it, but I'm claiming I'm targeting the bad guy. But you know that, in effect, your action is going to, in effect, destroy the civilian population. I'm sorry. This is a distinction without a difference. And I don't care about your appeal to international law. Look, I'm Lysander Spooner on this issue of international law. I think either international law allows what Israel is doing to Gaza, or it's been powerless to stop it. So either way, it has not been effective enough. By the way, it does seem like it's the latter, not the former, seeing as how there is, criminal warrants out for Netanyahu for committing war crimes. But regardless of that, the bottom line here is that Israel is doing this to the civilian population of Gaza, and nobody who's being honest doesn't believe that the only reason Israel won't let journalists in there is because they don't want the world to see what they're doing to these people. Period. That's the reason, and everybody, including you, knows it. The problem here is that you're not allowed to tell the truth. You're Israel's lawyer, and you got to defend them no matter what. Natasha, does Israel have nuclear weapons?
Sorry, I'm an independent.
Does Israel have nuclear weapons?
The English bar.
Yes or no?
That's a good question.
I'm not instructed.
Yes or no?
I'm
yes
not
or no,
instructed.
Natasha? Does
Israel have nuclear weapons, Natasha?
Why do you think I would know any better than you, Piers?
What's the name of your company?
You do know. You are not telling the truth, and so you won't say it. By the way, hang on here, Piers. Well, let me just say, it's disqualifying to this conversation. You're playing a different game than me and Piers are. We're having a conversation about what's actually going on. You're a lawyer who's not allowed to incriminate your client, which is Israel, because you know the answer the same way Piers knows it, the same way I know it. Do they have nukes?
Let me be perfectly clear. I am not in the employ of anyone associated.
What's the name of your organisation?
UK Lawyers for Israel began as a voluntary association of lawyers looking for the proper application of law to Israel, Israelis, and combating anti-Semitism. It is
Do they
truly
have nuclear
remarkable. We are
weapons,
having
though?
a different conversation. This is a circus, and I'm actually seeking to
Can't answer,
address
Piers.
practical questions, including the disgusting situation that we are now left with.
And there it is, folks. When even Piers Moral Quandary Morgan starts gagging on the propaganda, you know the Zionist script has officially run out of ink. For the last 21 months, Piers played the role of the conflicted diplomat. Israel has the right to defend itself. But until the but got bulldozed alongside schools, hospitals, and any other last shred of plausible deniability, and now he's done. The moral gymnastics canceled. The PR spin flatter than Natasha's legal excuses. And Dave Smith didn't just dismantle Natasha. He lit her argument on fire and handed her the ashes in a reusable UN tote bag, especially on calling her out whether they have nukes or not. The world's not buying it anymore. The sympathy tank is empty. We've seen the body counts, the bombed out nurseries, the excuses. And if Israel's defenders think people are still failing for the same Hasbro highlight reel, they're not just insulting Gaza, they're insulting everyone's intelligence. So shout out to Dave for keeping it real, and even bigger props to Piers for finally switching off the autopilot and flying straight into the truth turbulence. Because when bullshit becomes policy, calling it out becomes the real act of courage. Don't forget to hit that like button, y'alls. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Truth needs allies, not apologists. Catch you later.